do a little free code and code up SQL, Postgres, and what I'm going to need some imports. I'm going to need the SQL stuff. I don't even know where to start. I need to get my connection right, and so I could go to here, and I want to be able to open, and I want that with SQL. And when I open, I'm going to get back a pointer to DB and an error. So I'll do DB error : SQL.open, and then I'm going to have a driver name, and we'll just do Postgres. One thing we didn't check was I don't know, we'll call it connection string. One thing we didn't check was changing that name. We'll check that. I'm going to do a con string : $2, and now I'm going to put in my parameters there. Right, and my parameters, y'all find this interesting, useful, helpful, or am I wasting your time? Raise your hand and keep going. Just making sure we're all on the same page. Okay. So I'm going to look at my drivers. I've got the Postgres driver, and then here I've got documentation, and then here I've got more documentation, and here's where I could start getting some of my connection string stuff. So host will be localhost, port 5432, DB name is going to be bookstore. And then user is going to be bond, and password is going to be password. And do we need anything else? We've got user, we've got password, and oh, we have that parameter value thing for this deal. So we got DB name, user, password, and we need SSL mode. Right? Disable. No SSL. Cool. So we get our connection string, and now we want to check our error. If error is not equal to nil, panic. Otherwise, DB with a pointer to DB pointer to DB, one of the things we have is close. We could go read about it. Close closes the database, prevents new queries. Close and waits for all queries that start processing on the server to finish. It is rare to close a DB, as the DB handle is meant to be long-lived and shared between many Go routines. So we'll just close this before we shut our program down. So when main exits, it gets closed. Now we got a DB connection, if all worked well, and we could test that with ping. So here's ping. And ping verifies connection to the database still live, establishing a connection, or it returns an error. So we could do db.ping, and that can return an error. Error's already been declared, so we just use the equal sign. And if error is not equal to nil, panic error. Otherwise, func.println connected to database. And the only thing I don't know is our user, was our user Bond, was that right, or was it James? Can't remember. I don't know how to look that up in Postgres. That exceeds my knowledge of Postgres. So the user that we created was Bond, and password's password. And then we also gave bond super user. So that should all connect. So let's see what happens. Unknown driver, postgres, forgot import. Ah, what did we forget? Let's throw away, and we need to bring in that import, and that import is, I gotta go through all this again. Boom. Boom. And it's right there. Now it should work. And what happened now? Go routine 1 running, main users, exit status 2. Panic SQL database is closed. So that's kind of interesting. Database is closed. Do we have the right database? Bookstore. And our database is bookstore. Did we close it too fast? Oh, I forgot defer, right? Defer DB close. Okay, let's try it now. Yeah. Cool. So next thing we want to do is pull out some data. So we're going to have a type book struct. And I'm going to say that this can leave the package by making it capitalized. It'll be visible outside the package. And the struct is going to have, we could do select, well, we could do details, and then books. And it's ISBN, title, author, price. ISBN, which is going to be a string. Title, which is going to be a string. Price, which is going to be, author will be a string, and price will be a float 64. Author will be a string, and price will be float 64. I'm not sure if I got my data types right, so I'm just going to look at that. So string, 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 float 32. Close enough. Don't need all that extra data. And I had those lowercase previously. I made them uppercase just in case for some reason I want to pass them to a template. So now I'm ready to start thinking about getting data out. So to do that, I need a query. So with a pointer to DB, I have all these methods available. With a pointer to a DB, I have all these methods available when I have a pointer to a DB. I have all these methods available when I have a pointer to a DB. One of them is to do a query, right there. Query executes a query that returns rows, typically a select. The args are for any placeholder parameters in the query. So I'm going to do, it's rows and an error. So I'm going to do, I don't know, r error. I'll do r's. R's and error, colon equal, db.query. And then I need a query string. Query string. and any args gives me a pointer to rows and errors. So it's going to be select star from bookstore. Is that the name of my table? Table is books. And do I include the semicolon? I'm thinking maybe I do. We can just double check that. Yes, you include it. A little cheat. So now that we have our query, which returns pointer to rows. We have pointer to rows. We've got close, we've got next, we've got scan, we've got error. We have columns. So I need to put all that somewhere. And it's going to be basically next and scan. I want to read what error does and what close does. So error returns the error if any that was encountered during iteration. Error may be called after an explicit or implicit close. Close closes rows. If next is called and returns false and there are no further result sets, the rows are closed automatically. And next needs to be called before scan. It returns true on success or false if there is no next row. So I will do for rows.next. That will return true if there's another row. Every call to scan must be preceded by next. Prepares the next result row for reading, and you read it with scan. So next gets the next row ready for reading. If there is one, it returns true. So we're ready to read that. Now we need to scan it. And to do that, we drop stuff into pointers, right? So we've got rs.scan. And this is where we drop the pointers in. And then we're going to want to store all of our records. So we're going to have a slice of books. We can call it slice of B colon equal to make a slice of book. And, you know, I wish I could see how many records there were. I'll just go for 10 right off the bat. Make my slice 10, the length in the cap 10. And now I need to create a book. So I've got a B, and that's going to be equal to composite literal book, type book, and curly braces with nothing in it. And then I'm going to scan, and I'm going to put into there, and the order matters. And so the order is ISBN, title, author, price. So I'm going to do pointer to b.isbn and a pointer to b.title and a pointer to b.author and a pointer to b.price. So I drop all that in. And now my B is holding the data for a book for this record. So I'm going to do xb is equal to append xbb. I'm going to append to my slice of books. And I can check that error, rs.error. And there's some interesting code. It's the comma OK idiom. So we want to read about error. Error returns the error, if any, that was encountered during iteration. Error may be called after an explicit. So when I call this, it says it returns the error if any. So it returns an error, right? And I'm going to do an if error. So when this runs, it's going to return an error. And so I'm going to do that, and then error is not equal to nil. Panic. So this is the comma OK idiom. I'm just going to go check to make sure I got it right. Golang spec and effective go. Comma OK. And it's you run something and assign values, then you have a semicolon, then you check it. Right? So comma OK idiom. And so here I ran something and I assigned values and I check that error if it's not nil and I do something. So that's going to evaluate to true and it does it. So that's called the comma OK idiom. And now I don't need to close because next will close automatically when it's done. And we read that here. I thought it did. Maybe, yeah, I'm pretty sure I thought next did. Rows, columns, rows, error. Oh, here it says it. If next is called and returns false and there are no further result sets, the rows are closed. Yeah. So that's where next closes it. So that looks pretty good, right? Does that look good to you? Yes? Make a slice of book, create an empty book. Every time that book's going to get created, put the data into the address, the pointer, for each of the fields of that book. Append that to my XB, and then I just need to print everything out. And so for that, for index value, if I wanted to, I could have that colon equal range XB and format.println index value. So now we're going to range over all the books that came out of the database, make sure that they're okay. See what I forgot. Nothing came out. Oh, well, here are the first 10 records. That's funny. And then here are the 3 that got added. So that's kind of a weird thing. If I set that to 0, then we'll get it like this. Because append adds to the end of it. So that's what that was about. Pretty sweet, right? In the next video, we'll connect it up to a little web thing.